Hey everybody. So this week's journal entry and exercise is designed to get us from a very loose and general topic to a research question. I feel like I stressed this in one of my last videos, but I will say it again as I will say it again in future videos. You cannot do good research unless you have a fully flushed out research question. For your first project, I gave you that question. I gave you 4 choices for fake news stories, and then I said, can you please expose the fakeness of this story and tell me how to avoid it in the future? Question mark, right? That was the question, and then we went in and looked into our articles. We did our research on our articles. We analyzed the articles. We talked about fake news in general, how to avoid it moving forward, because that's what the question led us to investigate, to research, and to write about. So in order to keep yourself grounded, you need to have a research question. And if you don't, your paper is going to be typically very general, all over the place. You'll find yourself having a lot of writer's block because you don't really know what to research, or you don't know what to write because you have so many ideas and there's so many things to say. So, the point of generating ideas for research is to get you from a general idea to a slightly more specific one. The only way to do that is to generate ideas. So for this week, I'm asking you to generate ideas again, but instead of generating ideas in a general sense, where I asked you last week to look up information on COVID, I asked you to look up what's in the news about COVID, and I asked you to turn on your CNNs and your Fox and your other news media sources and just listen and watch what's going on. The reason I did that was because I wanted you to know that there's a lot of different things that people are talking about. It's not just people getting sick from this disease. There's a lot of other factors. There's an almost endless amount of ways in which COVID has affected everyday life, right? So in order to get from that really just general idea, we did that research last week, and hopefully at this point of our research project, you can say to me or to anybody else, I'm really interested in doing a paper on COVID and education. I'm really interested in doing a paper on COVID and the entertainment industry. I'm really interested in doing a paper on COVID and public spaces, so on and so forth. If you like one of those, feel free to take it. But we need to get from there to an even more specific question, because how are you going to do a paper on COVID and entertainment? What are you going to talk about? All aspects of entertainment? Theater, movies, podcasts, music, concert, touring, box office movies, drive-in movies, streaming services? Are you going to talk about all of that in 8 to 10 pages? Maybe if you were writing a 100, 200 page book, you might be able to get in a good portion of that. But we're only doing 8 to 10 pages, and so you need to not just do a paper on COVID and education. You need to do a paper on COVID and successful ways for at-home learning, or COVID and tips for opening up schools again, or COVID and protecting teachers in the classroom, or COVID and protecting students in the classroom, right? There's so many different things that you can do in terms of education, so you have to choose something really specific. Now, over the rest of the week and into next week, we're going to talk a lot about research questions and how to actually phrase them. But in the interim, in the meantime, you do need to do more work before we get to there. If I were to start a lecture or a PowerPoint on research questions, it would be interesting and insightful, but because you don't have a lot to think about in regards to a research question, you might forget a little bit about it and not help you, and it wouldn't help you out very much. So by doing what I'm going to ask you to do over the next 4 days for this journal entry, 4, 5, 6 days, however long, what I'm going to ask you to do for it is the steps you need to take in order to prepare yourself for that research question. Just like I said last week, if you don't generate ideas, you're not going to be able to get to a topic. If you don't generate ideas, again, specifically on what you want to do, you're not going to be able to get to that question. And your paper and your sanity will both suffer as a result. So I just want to read a little bit here, and then I'll explain, but it's for you as well. So for this week's entry, right? So here's what I'm asking you to do, and then here's what I'm asking you to write. So I want you to do more research, but only specifically on the topic you've chosen. If you choose COVID in education, I want you to do a general search for as much additional information as you can find on the topic. So in excuse me, in essence, you are, instead of typing into Google COVID, you're typing COVID in education. It might be hard to get this through the TV because the TV talks about what the TV wants to talk about, but you might be able to find information through podcasts or certain online media or publications, because you can do specific searches for things that you're looking for. So, I mean, do a Google search for COVID in education, or type in, how has COVID affected education into Google or Bing or Jeeves, if that's still a thing. See what comes up. Now, I'm not saying with this you have to read every single article in depth. You can look at titles. You can read a little bit of it. You can skim. You can watch a little bit of it. You can listen to a little bit of it. The idea, again, here is not to necessarily find the sources you're going to use, but to more or less find out what you want to do. You could think of it like this, like you're trying to figure out all the things you can do so that you can make a better decision as to what you want to do. If you only have a choice of one thing, you're going to choose that one thing, whether it's good or bad. If you have two, hopefully one's better than the other, but you don't know. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 things to think about and choose from, well, you have better options. All right, so how do you do this? The same way you did it last week, just with different keywords, more specific searches that you're going with. So after you've spent, an hour or so doing that, generating ideas, filling your brains with interesting information, I want you to write this stuff down. It would address these 4 questions. So please do them in paragraph form, so you could do 4 paragraphs. Number 4 will probably be pretty short. Try and hit 500 words. If you are a little less, I'm not going to freak out and, scream. But if you're way, way under, it will affect your grade in the long run. So 1, what specific subjects are you considering and why? Pretty straightforward. Like, okay, I'm considering, as an example, education and online schooling. Considering education and protecting teachers. I'm considering education and what future going back to school could look like. What going back to school in the future could look like. Second paragraph, why are you leaning towards one more than the other? So pretty straightforward. 3, what do you hope to learn and or prove after doing this research paper? So we're starting to think a little bit, forward into the future. It's like, okay, I'm interested in doing this, but now you're starting to think, okay, why do I want to do this? What am I hoping to get from this? Starting to drive that focus is going to really help with that research question. And 4th and finally, at this very moment, what do you think your research question is going to be? So I'm going to do a video and a presentation and all this supporting materials for research questions in a little bit, probably in a few days. But in the interim, like in the meantime, all good research questions start off as really bad research questions. And then you do a little bit more working and thinking and writing and processing, and then you come back and you refine and revise your question. A lot of academics, a lot of writers will call it a working thesis. Not a working thesis, a working research question, meaning that they come back to it and they're revising and it's changing and it's growing. Well, not growing, it's getting more specific, it's taking shape. But the only way to get to that really good one is to write down a few bad ones or a few weak ones, let's call them, and to think about, okay, how can I make this stronger? How can I make this more specific? And we're going to talk about how to do that, how to take a rough general question and turn that into something that's more specific and concrete. So that is Journal 2 for the week. Please get on it. The longer you wait, the more journals you fall behind, the harder this project becomes and the more time consuming it will be. I know I'm saying that this might take you an hour and a half this week for your research project, but if you do this now, it probably takes off 2 to 3 hours of you sitting at a computer doing frantic research, of you sitting at a computer not knowing what to say, of you sitting, of you getting up and walking away from the computer because of frustration and like saying, okay, I will come back in a few minutes. So this work now really does help to save time in the end. When it comes to a research project like this, how do I put this? It requires X amount of hours of work, legitimate work, if you want it to be strong, good. The more time you procrastinate, the less time you have to put towards it. So like I would honestly say that if you do want on the first go around an A on this paper, it's probably gonna take you anywhere from an hour to 2 a week, up until its due date. So that gives us 8 weeks-ish, 7-8 weeks. So, about somewhere between like 7 to like 13, 14 hours of total time. So it stinks when you have to do all that, on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you go mad and you just don't want to do it anymore. So let's get on it. Let's keep working. And there'll be videos tomorrow, Saturday, and probably Sunday with more information about the project and things along those lines. All right, everybody, if you need me, reach out to me. Good luck. Thank you.